The Loop.
The Loop. You have the divine spark. The Loop.
Do or do not. There is no try.
The Loop.
Give me your roar.
Hey there, this is Misha, and welcome to episode number 11 of The Loop, the podcast where I interview career experts and coaches on everything from job interview advice, on how to be more authentic at work, how to find more meaning at work, and much, much more. Today's guest is Harsh Mittal, who was a software development engineer at Microsoft for 4 years. He has led and delivered many on-site and off-site trainings for engineers. He is a career coach, and he also recently got a job at Amazon. So from this date of this recording, I think about a month ago. So we actually talk a lot about his transition into Amazon and sort of the interview process and how it's different between Microsoft and Amazon. We talk a lot about the culture at Microsoft and what that's like as an engineer. We also go over his 9-step plan that he shares with people who are interviewing at Microsoft or really any tech company for sort of engineering and coding interviews. It gets a little bit technical, so it sort of went over my head at times, but I am sure that if you have any sort of engineering background, that it should make sense to you. And he basically shares his plan of how he approaches interviews, and he's been quite successful with that for himself, getting multiple offers and working at big tech companies, but also helping many other people. So if that sounds interesting to you, then I think you will enjoy today's conversation. Hey Harsh, thanks for joining me.
Hey Misha, thanks for having me here. It's been a pleasure.
Yeah, man. So we've spoken a couple times. You've done an event as well with Karis, my startup. So I know a little bit about your background, and I think today we're probably gonna talk about Microsoft, Amazon, maybe a couple tech companies. And I thought it could be a good place to start to just maybe introduce yourself, share a little bit of context on where you're coming from, and sort of what you've done in the last few years.
Sure, absolutely. So I am from India. I've been born and brought up in India, and I did I completed my engineering in computer science,
Mm-hmm.
my bachelor's, and then I joined Microsoft India. I worked there for 4 years. And currently, I think it's been around a month. Yeah, around a month ago, I switched to Amazon India as an
Congrats.
SD2. Yeah, thanks, man. Currently working here, it's been fun. It's been challenging, and I've had the pleasure of working with I think two of the most prestigious companies in the tech field right now. And yeah, I think it's as a kid or as an aspiring engineering student had been a dream to be sort of be able to work in these companies and be able to discover how they build the systems at the scale that they do, right?
Right.
Both Microsoft and Amazon. I think one thing that has been fascinating has been the scale, the uh, the desperate need to maintain the quality of the software,
Mm-hmm.
the obsession we share for the customer. I think that's been a very common ground throughout, and it's been fun learning.
Cool, man. Thanks for that. I want to ask you more about what you mean exactly, and talk a little bit more about what it was like at Microsoft. But you're there for just a month at Amazon, so it must be pretty intense, and I imagine stressful onboarding and catching up. I mean, how do you feel?
Oh, it has been overwhelming, definitely. I've had good teammates. I am in an amazing team. I love the work that my team does.
Yeah.
It's it's a kind of work that makes you want to work. Okay, and I think that's something that I really appreciate a lot. There is definitely a lot of learning.
Yeah.
In the very short span of time, I've had a chance to learn almost a dozen services of
Mm-hmm.
AWS and being able to work on them. I'm learning new frameworks, it's everything's new to me over here, right? I mean, even starting from the OS on which I was used to working, even that's new for me here.
Mm.
The tools are different, the processes are different, the domain of work is different. But I think it was the only thing that has been something that uh, has been a constant comforting factor over here
Mm-hmm.
is that the work that I'm doing here, it's very intuitive. It's very easy to visualize, and it's something that I can see everywhere around me.
What do you mean? Do you mean because the products, because like consumer products? Is that what you mean?
True. So the team that I work in is actually dealing with the seller fulfillment, making sure that, when the minute we place an order, what happens on the seller side,
Mm-hmm.
making sure that that experience is up to the mark, and
Mm-hmm.
it's it's just that. So uh, being able to visualize yourself as a seller is a very easy thing,
Yeah.
especially in a country which is uh, as large as India, right? The scale at which we place orders and the scale at which we see orders coming in every day, day in, day out. The business model for Amazon is very unique when it comes to India as well. So, just give me one second. Yeah. So, all in all, the complete experience that I've had working over here has been truly enriching. I can't believe it's been just a month.
Yeah, man. Well, it's fresh on your mind, so I'd love to know, since you just went through this interview process. I'm super curious because I know a lot about Amazon. I worked with them for a bit, and also a lot about Google, but less about Microsoft. So I'd love to hear your comparison between. I guess you were at Microsoft for 4 years, so it was a while ago. But do you remember the interview process at that time, and sort of how does that compare to your interview process for, I guess, an engineering role, right, at Amazon, sort of similar role?
That's, I think my comparison will be a little biased
Okay.
and also a little inaccurate.
Okay.
The reason being that I joined Microsoft straight out of college,
I see. I
right?
see. Okay.
And the interview experience that a college hire has, as opposed to an industry experience, it's very different. As an industry hire, you are judged upon the work that you have done, your communication skills, your the how much have you learned about the culture of our company, and how much do you value the culture of the company they're going at. As a college hire, these things are not something that really add that much,
Hmm.
or have that much weightage over your overall interview experience. uh, my interviewers at Microsoft were more focused on making sure that I was very comfortable. And, as in, I felt like I was being treated like a kid over there,
Oh, wow.
right?
Okay.
And because I was a kid.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. You were. So
So,
it's like,
yeah,
but they still. I mean, it's still a full time role, right? So like, it's not like, it
yeah.
wasn't like an easy interview. Like, you still had to do some coding tests and all that, right?
It's not.
Yeah.
It was not.
Yeah.
I think I don't judge any interview and call it easy or difficult. It's just stuff you know and stuff you don't. Because at the end of the day, it's
Sure.
just lead code problems, right?
Hmm.
I think definitely the complexity of the problems that were asked for to me at Microsoft were very different than Amazon, because Microsoft was for an SD1 position
Hmm.
and Amazon was for an SD2 position. So definitely uh, the difficulty aspect of these conversations, these problems change. But if I have to talk about the major differences between the interviews, was that first of all, the design questions were not there in the first interview. If I'm talking about Microsoft, I didn't have a lot of design questions which were there in
You
Amazon.
mean system design?
And system design, low level design. At Amazon I had five interview rounds. One was a screener hacker test or something they take. Second was the coding round.
Hmm.
Third was a low level design round. Fourth was a high level design round.
Hmm.
And fifth is a bar raiser round,
Hmm.
which, if you are interested, we could come back to in the later stage. I have been preparing to become an interviewer at Amazon, and I have completed my trainings over here as well. So I've had a chance to deep dive into the interview process and what are the things that they're looking for, and what are the exact things that, how what exactly are we looking in or looking for in the answer that a candidate provides to us.
Hmm.
So I've been digging up a little more on those,
Cool.
and I believe at Microsoft the difference is that Microsoft looks for more culture-oriented people. As in, we want you to be tech savvy, but we also want you to be more aligned to the culture that we are working at. We don't just want to see you be a person who comes in and just is great at tech but difficult to work with. We want to make sure that you believe in the vision that Microsoft believes in. We want to make sure that you are a person who believes in the betterment of the world around you, and wants to be a part of the change.
Yeah. I don't know if you have this image or impression, but when I've spoken to some people at Microsoft, there's a lot of people who more sort of senior managers and executives where they've been there for a very long time, right? Like 10, 15, 20 years. And I don't see that as often at Amazon for whatever reason. So I wonder if you notice, or if that's related to what you're saying right there about the culture and how sort of if you're a fit for the culture, they treat you well or something. I don't know. Like, what have you seen that before when you were there?
I think the culture at Microsoft is very natural, right? It's just it's not something that you have to work really hard on yourself for,
Okay.
right? At Microsoft, if I'm talking about the culture, if I'm talking about the uh, stuff that they want to see in you, it's mostly that you should have a growth mindset and you should be diverse and inclusive,
Mm.
right? But at Amazon, the difference is that we have around a dozen leadership principles,
Yeah.
right? And we want to make sure that everyone's aligned to them because we want over here everyone to be a leader.
Hmm.
And that can cause a conflict because at the end of the day, it's a very fast-paced environment. And I my opinion is that maybe some people find it hard to cope up or match up to that for a really long amount of time.
Hmm.
Prior to joining Amazon, everything I knew about Amazon was from an external perspective, right?
Hmm.
I was just seeking reviews on the internet or seeking feedback from people who have worked at Amazon.
Hmm.
After joining Amazon, one thing that has completely changed for me is the fact that Amazon is an execution engine,
Hmm.
right? They take stuff, they execute, and they execute it with, and they don't compromise on quality. They don't compromise on the kind of service or the kind of experience that they're providing to the customer.
Hmm.
And that's not easy,
Yeah.
right? You can't. Everything has to be done ASAP, right? We have the next sale coming. Stuff has to be out by the next sale. The festivals will not wait for us, right? We can't push the festivals, and our deadlines are very hard bounded by the kind of
Hmm.
events that are coming. For example, India has Diwali, right? Diwali is a Hindu festival. Not getting into the just, but it's pretty huge in India, okay?
Yeah.
And on Diwali, there are plenty of purchases. People purchase clothes, people purchase decoratives, people purchase all kinds of stuff. They buy new things in all the categories
Mm.
because they want to have a fresh start to everything. Diwali is considered sort of as a major milestone in a year,
Mm.
right? In those times, Amazon, a service provider like Amazon has to rise to the occasion.
Mm.
They have to be able to handle those number of orders. They need
Mm.
to be able to host sales. And for those things, the timelines become pretty hard because the
Yeah.
requirements of the customers are so much, and you have to deliver them on time. Every deliverable not met is loss of revenue to the business,
Yeah.
and that's the thing. At Microsoft, those things are not as hard bounded. So I have felt that may be one of the
Mm.
reasons.
That makes sense.
But yeah, and I think everyone's experience is different. For me, one thing has been really great is that the team that I'm in, the management that I have, they're very open about these things. They're very understanding over here, and I really appreciate that. The key differences that I see in the management of Amazon and Microsoft is that at Amazon, I feel that I own a lot of things,
Hmm.
and my priority has to be my work, and I don't have to look for other things.
Hmm.
Where at Microsoft, there were other things. There were always something or the other that required my attention, or some discussion or the other. There were a lot of meetings.
I see.
Comparatively, the meetings over here are very less.
Mm.
And yeah, but one thing that has been common is that in both the places, I've had the opportunity to meet and interact with amazing people.
Yeah.
People with great intellect, people with whom you can have uh, the best of the conversations. I have this very uh, a very silly habit where whenever I'm having a conversation with someone and if I feel that the conversation is important, I tend to make little notes
Hmm.
on my note app,
Hmm.
right? And at the end of the conversations, I judge the conversation or the quality of the conversation by looking at how many pointers did I add to my notes.
Hmm.
And I've seen that in both the places, but more at Amazon, the number of pointers in each notes is pretty huge.
Yeah.
because the conversations are of value. I don't have to spend 1 hour for a 15-minute valuable conversation. So
Yeah.
that's a good part.
We'll see. We'll see if it changes in a few months, right? Because you just got there. So, but yeah, no, that makes sense. So, why did you, if you don't mind me asking, like you were there for 4 years at Microsoft, sort of going back, why did you decide to move on? I mean, was it just like lack of growth, or was it just something really exciting popped up at Amazon? Can you share more about that?
It's not one, there's no one answer to
Yeah.
this. Okay, I think there were a bunch of factors. First of all, I did not want to leave Microsoft as because I was very comfortable
Hmm.
there. I really liked the atmosphere there. I still have great affinity towards the company. Okay. But I decided it was time for me. There was no pressure on the management either. I mean, everything was going great. There were promotions on the line, and my management was very happy with me. My seniors were very happy with me. I was also delivering. I was able to deliver. It was all going great. Okay? But so the lack of growth was not really a problem.
Okay.
The lack of growth was not there. It was just I had like I think even in my final reviews, it's written that the Harsh was set up for a promotion, but he decided to quit midway, right?
Yeah.
So it's that is the kind of place I was in. The reason I quit was because after a point I felt like my learning was getting stunted. I started practicing and reading and learning by myself a lot, and then I realized I'm learning more in my free time than I'm doing at my work. I felt like I'm just repeating the same set of processes again and again. I'm just doing the same thing in a newer way. It's not a new thing in a different way. So the challenges were very less, and I was not. I felt somewhere that I was not building something that was of great interest to me.
Yeah.
My work didn't excite me any longer.
Right.
That's and I mean, even when we look at the additional services that the tech stack that Microsoft uses, right? Be it Azure, I just felt like I'm oversaturated with the amount of learning that comes with it. And at this point, I mean,
Hmm.
obviously there'll be definitely more things for me to learn, but it's just that they are on need to know basis. That if I
Hmm.
need them, they're a search away.
Hmm.
So
Yeah.
I just wanted to get done with that. So I
Got it.
started interviewing. Uh, I had a bunch of offers. I had another offer from a FAANG company. I had a bunch of startup offers,
Hmm.
and then I got Amazon. I also got Coinbase. So there were amidst everything, I just wanted to weigh in my choices and
Hmm.
weigh in my options. I had a conversation with the manager that who was my hiring manager at Amazon, and the conversation was so impressive. It was so fulfilling
Hmm.
that I decided to join Amazon.
Awesome. Well, that's probably a pretty good reason if that's your boss or your hiring manager, right? Because that's one of the main reasons people stay, and one of the main reasons people leave. You also mentioned Coinbase. Did you get an offer from there, or were you just interviewing?
I was interviewing. I had I was done with a few rounds, but then I just read about the stuff. And in the meantime, I also accepted the offer from Amazon.
Right.
So when they called me back, I was very honest with them that, this is where it is. And they said that, if you can show us the offer from Amazon, we can expedite this thing, right? We can get past a few rounds. And I said that while I really appreciate the offer, I do not want to do that.
Hmm.
I mean, I didn't take any of my offer letters to another company. While that's not a bad practice, I don't blame anyone for doing that. I just didn't take any of my offer letters to a different company
Hmm.
saying that, hey, you know what, that company's paying me this much, pay me more.
Hmm.
I mean, and I was more excited about the kind of work that I get to do.
Hmm.
And I saw that at Amazon, and that was it for me. There was not even much negotiation of salary.
Yeah.
It's no aspect, right? It was just I like the work. I
Yeah.
told the HRC, do let me know whatever you can do, and if just make sure the figure sounds good, and they made sure of that.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, let's talk a little bit more about Microsoft because I'm still curious to hear about your time there and like maybe some advice you have for people that are interested in maybe joining Microsoft and figuring out what's going on there. I think that this is just again total outsider perspective. I have no idea, but it seems like when I see people moving around in FAANG companies, you see a lot of people going from Microsoft to other companies. I don't see as many people going from X FAANG company to Microsoft. maybe that's not true. Maybe it does happen. I don't see it happen as often. It seems like Microsoft is like a really good starting point for your career because you get to see how a big company works and you get to work, at a big scale. But then, yeah, there's also other exciting stuff out there, right? Like you've discovered. So tell me a little bit about what it's like working there, sort of like what the culture's like, and what it's like to be an engineer there.
I think just to reiterate, I don't completely believe that the part about people coming from FAANG to Microsoft is not true
Okay.
because one of the highest, like one of the major component of employees at Microsoft are from Amazon,
Okay. Okay. I didn't know
right?
that.
Yeah, so I had my last two managers at Microsoft were from Amazon.
Interesting.
So,
Okay.
and I
So
think
just like back and
that's also
forth.
something.
It's just back and forth then, right?
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
yeah, yeah.
Okay.
It's also this that I feel that that had been a key pointer in me wanting to choose Amazon because the two managers that I had, they were I loved the way their working style was, and I see in their conversations it came up a lot that the way they worked at Amazon, right?
Mhm.
And their Amazon stories were something that were inspiring. They were motivating, and I had some context about what working over there would be like.
Mhm.
But I think both of these companies they are I think they're the two largest competitors in the cloud world,
Yeah.
right, with the AWS and Azure, and they're both of them are competing at a great scale. And so yeah, I think the back and forth keeps happening. Both of these companies have great talents.
Yeah. Makes
Coming
sense.
to my time at Microsoft, um, I I had a lot of fun. I think one very good point about Microsoft was Microsoft made my college to corporate transition very easy. I had freedom to do everything. I had a lot of fun. I had a lot of flexibility,
Mhm.
and as long as I was getting my work done, getting my shit done, no one batted an eye. I feel that's also the need with thing with Amazon, but I also feel that at this point I am an experienced industry professional. I've had 4 years of experience, so the expectations are very different from me right
Mhm.
now. But at Microsoft, I felt that it was the different. It was very different because I always felt like I was a college graduate,
Mhm.
right? I always felt like I understood the importance of culture in a company. I understood the importance of vision and mission of a company. These are some things that you don't get taught in colleges. These are things that you don't learn while working somewhere.
Mhm.
And you don't understand how much it affects the overall working environment of a company as before and until you get there, until you see the work in a company, until you see the company's work environment being shaped by the culture that they're trying to promote and how the company is working actively towards doing that.
Mhm.
And at Microsoft, I felt like Microsoft made additional like exceptional efforts in making sure that their culture uh, did go down in to the granular level. I did feel at the end of it that the culture at Microsoft did start to deteriorate a little because I
Mhm.
was I was see I was judging. I had no other factor to judge it on, right? I had no comparing company to judge Microsoft on. I judged Microsoft from the time I had spent in Microsoft earlier. Now maybe it's because of my the pandemic and the work from home, the remote work setting or what. But I felt like at one point the culture sort of shifted uh, to I won't say a bad point. It just started to feel a little thinner.
Thinner.
The culture coating. Yeah, I think they had a very thick culture coating around everything when I joined or in the first few years that I was there. But maybe it was that it was becoming monotonous for me, or maybe it was that it was I had a constant management. I had like in the last few months, I had a lot of management changes coming in, reorg, and all of that happening.
Mm.
So maybe the new managers or the new management was had different priorities, but I did feel somewhere along the line the culture did take a hit.
Mhm.
I'm not sure if it was temporary. I'm not sure if it was just me, but that's my opinion.
Mm. Yeah. So you
But
you felt that,
otherwise,
yeah.
yeah, I mean, otherwise, I have nothing against Microsoft. I
Mhm.
love the company. I
Mhm.
love the people over there, and even the goodbye was very sad.
Were you on the interview panel for like other engineers who were interviewing at Microsoft?
A couple of times,
Okay.
yes. I did not participate as much in interviews at Microsoft, and that's something that I have regretted.
Hmm.
So I'm making efforts to actively become an interviewer at Amazon.
Yeah.
So I didn't even complete. I didn't even actually proactively try to complete the training. It was never something that came to my attention or
Mm.
came to my uh, uh, plate.
Hmm.
But I think like my last manager at Amazon at Microsoft, who was from Amazon, he came in and he said that why are you not interviewing? I want you to interview. And I said, okay, never came up to my mind that maybe I should take this up.
Hmm.
So the minute I joined Amazon, I had this conversation, and my manager here said that let me know if you would want to be part of the interview process. And I said definitely.
Hmm.
So he told me to complete these trainings, and I did. So hopefully starting soon.
Cool. Cool. But you're still like apart from doing it formally, like you were informally helping out friends and stuff, right? Who are interested in Microsoft and like what kind of tips would you give them? Because I remember, I think maybe this was like a few weeks or a few months ago, and there was something that you had mentioned about you sort of had this like plan or this like I think it was like a 9-step plan or something that you would share with people on interview prep, and I think it was specifically around coding and like engineering interviews. Could you share a little bit about that and like what that was all about?
Yeah, so I think while preparing for my interviews this year, I realized that there are two things which are missing at a the greater problem is that we have a lot of information, but a lot of information is not that information is not structured, right? We have this plethora of information. We have hundreds of websites trying to tell you how to crack an interview, but one is none of that information is structured.
Hmm.
There are no key takeaways from that. And the worst is everyone tells you how to crack a software engineering interview. No, none of these websites tell you how to be a good software engineer,
Hmm.
right? If you go over there, if you go anywhere, right, you will, even if you say being a software developer engineer or becoming a software developer engineer, or how to be a good software developer engineer, you will find the most of the articles will be like, oh, here's how you can crack. Just
Hmm.
I tried to prior to my joining, I tried to ramp up on a few skills. Right, you know, the best practices to become to be a good software engineer at Amazon, for
Hmm.
example. All I could find was my interview experience, how to crack this interview.
Yeah.
And that's,
Huh.
I think that's a major problem because we are educating the people to only focus on lead code and uh, telling them that, you know, lead code is all they'll have to do. That's
Hmm.
the kind of expectation we are setting with them.
Hmm.
And that's largely not true. How often do we get to use the algorithms that we learn on lead code? The data structures, how often do you go ahead and use graphs or other data structures on your
Hmm.
day-to-day basis?
Hmm.
Right? That's not as much as it happens, and but that's the kind of impression that we have set.
Yeah.
So my plan was the course that the session that I gave, right? And I mean I have taught a lot of people over the past 6 7 months. I have taken multiple sessions, be it mock interviews, one-on-ones, resume reviews, or just delivering a session on individual topics,
Hmm.
creating study plans. And one thing, these are a few things that I've learned. One is uh, try to create a study plan. That's the first thing that I say. Okay. Try to note down the stuff that you have to study for, the stuff that you have to study about, and just write the resource associated to that. That let's say if I want to study backtracking, right? So I would also list down where I would want to study it from, or what would I call the success criteria of me completing the course of backtracking. Because I can't solve every question on earth that has backtracking,
Hmm.
right? So I would want to give myself a completion criteria that denotes that now I'm done with it. So take a time out, take a day out, and write down all the topics, everything. Be it if you're think system design, maybe write down a few YouTube channels that you want to study it from, or maybe Have a if you have a mentor or if you have a study
Hmm.
guide, talk to them and let them know that these are topics that you want to study for and how create a plan with them.
Hmm.
But first and foremost, write down topics that you want to study.
That's a really good tip. Yeah. I just want to say it's a really good tip because I think a lot of people, from what I've seen, like they'll just go online and start searching for stuff, and then they just start like consuming it, right? And then they'll watch the video, and then maybe they put in some practice sessions to go and leak code, and then they do something else, in a week, right? And it's not, um, yeah, there's not necessarily like a plan or a list of things to do. It's just sort of like whatever you find out there, you just sort of consume, which is not to blame them. I think it makes sense. Like it's very unstructured. There's a lot of information out there. So what you're saying is put a little structure around it, and figure out exactly what you're going to do for whatever 2 weeks or 1 month to prepare.
Absolutely, and also I feel that it gets overwhelming after a point. If you keep searching and the consumption material is endless, where do you stop? You just never see the course getting completed. I think coding is something that takes around 2 to 3 months preparation time is required for you to be ready for interviews. I took 1 month for myself and I was able to do it in a month. But I don't think everyone can. I'm not saying that I'm brighter than you are. It's just that my experience has been very different and it was easier for me to do it. It was not as difficult for me to do it in 1 month, but maybe it won't be for others. If there are people who are not as accustomed to coding and who do not code as frequently as I did, it would be very difficult for them to go ahead and get it all done in a month. And if you're talking about a 3 month, 4 month investment for something, you need to have a structure. You need to be able to look at problems and understand that it's okay to not know them because this is the topic that you have not studied yet.
Hmm.
Because it's also intermingling. You find a question, there are 10 different ways to do it. You go to the solution, you see that the implementation of a user is requires the knowledge of topic that you are yet to study.
Hmm.
And if that minute, if you start studying that topic right away, it's just going to be an endless cycle of you not finishing stuff.
Hmm.
If you find a topic that you've not covered yet but have plans to do it later, just let it be. It's okay. You'll come to that. Maybe make a note of that question. Maybe make a note of that problem so that you can revisit it once you're done with the new topic. Like if I'm solving an array question and if I see a hash implementation of that, and if I'm yet to do hash, I would just add that question somewhere that once I'm done with hashing, I need to revisit this question and make sure that I understand what was happening here. But not that I would just immediately start studying hashing. Take one topic and finish it at a time. And another problem that I see is that people take up like people list down the topics, and when it the time for studying a particular topic comes, they go in this endless cycle of searching for where to get it from, where to study it from, where to get it from, where to study it from.
Hmm.
And I feel that it makes you lose the momentum that you had because getting into that momentum of get studying and executing, studying and coding, that is very important. And I don't think that momentum should be broken for trying to search for where to study from.
Okay.
So it's important to list down all the resources at the very beginning
I see. I see.
so that
Okay.
once you're done with the topic, you just know where to look at it,
Okay.
not the other way around.
Got it.
So this was the complete study plan thing. Next is there were a few. I mean, make notes for yourself, very short notes.
Hmm.
Don't just write a paragraph that because you are the one who's going to have to revisit it later,
Hmm.
right? So you would want to make yourself understand it in the shortest number of sentences.
Hmm.
So I just make like 2 word, 3 word notes for myself on every topic or every particular feature that I could revisit later.
Hmm.
For example, if I want to understand Kafka, right? If I want to make a note on Kafka, let me call it something simple. Let's say I want to write a note on BFS and DFS, binary breadth first search and depth first search. I would just write the basic cases where BFS or DFS is used. If I want to write about a few traversals, I would just write what when in which scenario each traversal is used, so I can just revisit it later in short for me.
Hmm.
So make notes, but for yourself. You're not making it for anyone else.
Hmm.
As long as you understand it, it's fine. Uh, then it was write code skeletons. Code skeletons is something that, and I know if many people do it, or many people did it the way I did it. I just like to analyze a bunch of problems
Hmm.
and write down a pseudo code ish skeleton in my notes, right? I would never refer to it. Like let's take a sliding window as an example, right? For sliding window problems, I wrote a pseudocode for myself, which I call my code skeleton. I find that a huge number of problems that fall in the sliding window family, they can be solved using that code skeleton.
Hmm.
But every time I see a question, I don't go and refer to that. It's just something that I have written so that it makes it easier for me to understand that, okay, this is how it works. I
Hmm.
don't learn it. I try, I do it, I reverse engineer the entire thing.
Hmm.
I practically study, I practically have that intuition in my mind, and then I write that intuition down.
Hmm.
So that helps me in strengthening my own concepts. And then comes the nine pointer interview plan,
Okay.
right? Which was how you give an interview.
Okay. Okay.
So how you give an interview is first of all, you ask, okay? If I tell you, Misha, write me a program to add two numbers, and if you just start coding right away without having an understanding of what I'm trying to ask,
Hmm.
what if I'm telling you the numbers are in binary?
Hmm.
What if I'm telling you the numbers can exceed the limits of an integer bound or anything, right?
Hmm.
N number of
So
things.
you have to ask a
Clarify.
clarifying question first. Yeah. That's
Yes.
probably a
Yes.
good. Sorry, this is this advice for engineering interviews specifically or any interview?
I think it becomes very generic. My nine pointer plan was mostly for coding practices,
Hmm.
but lately I've come to realize that it's just everywhere, right? I
Yeah.
think people try to ask interviewers try to ask very vague questions that
Hmm.
uh, what is your favorite song? If I ask what is your favorite song, you're going to be confused, right? So it's okay to clarify that which language are you talking about, which genre are you talking about, right?
Hmm.
So that you can narrow it down in your own mind, because what is a very relative term,
Hmm.
right? If I tell you what does water taste like,
Hmm.
there are so many things. What kind of water are you talking about?
Hmm.
So just try to narrow it down and make sure
Hmm.
that you are not getting lost in interpretation anywhere.
Let's assume this is more focused on engineering, but then at the same time, it could be more broad.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So let's like quickly go through them. Do you remember? Do you remember all of them?
I kind of do. I might miss
Roughly.
one or two
Roughly.
here and there.
That's okay. I can
Yeah,
link back to it later if we forget some.
yeah. I think one was ask clarifying questions.
Hmm.
Asking clarifying questions is also good because it gives you time to think.
Hmm.
Because you can ask. I mean, I'll not say ask the dumbest questions, but then try to come up with a little intelligent questions that buy you some time. And then in the meantime, you can also study the problem and try to make links in your mind, because when the only time that you get to think by yourself is when the interviewer is speaking.
Hmm.
If the interviewer is not speaking, then you should be able to communicate your thoughts, which is the second point.
Hmm.
Think out loud.
Hmm.
If you tell me to create a program that serves as a calculator, right? And if I'm thinking in my own mind of what I would do, that sends a red flag, because as an interviewer, I do not want to see what you're doing over here. I want to see how your brain works the minute a question is given to you.
Hmm.
So you would probably start talking about, okay, if I'm talking about a calculator, I would probably want to have these four functions, things like that. Okay, so you try to put yourself in that uh, place where you can talk openly about the thoughts or communicate openly about the thoughts that you're having. The best way to do it is try to communicate to yourself while you're solving a problem. Okay, try to structure the way in which you solve a problem. Don't just start coding.
Hmm.
And the first thing is just try to ask clarifying questions. Third was probably ask questions and draw examples, find results, and verify the results with the exam with the interviewer.
Hmm.
A very good point. If I'm serving this input, will this be the output? Okay,
Hmm.
because that helps in eliminating any assumptions that you must have made in your own head. Okay, that just strengthens your interpretation. That just makes sure that you and interviewer are on the same page of what's about to be done.
I see. I see. So you ask clarifying questions, and then you're sort of mapping out the example, and then asking if these assumptions are correct.
Absolutely,
Okay.
absolutely. Uh, fourth was the fourth point was code first, improvise later.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I conducted a lot of mock interviews, and one thing that I've seen that disappoints me far too often is how people lay out a solution and then tell me that, but it's not the most efficient solution, and then they spend the rest of the interview time not having any solution at all.
Mm-hmm.
I would say, right, talk about a solution and implement it first. You can improvise upon it later.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. If you cannot think of a solution straightforward, if you think it's going to take you time to come up with an efficient solution, try the execution once. Give me the exponential time complexity solution. I'll tell you. I'm there to help you out, right? We are there to solve it together. But I want to see you being able to do things, not just say and not have anything. Something is better than nothing.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. If you start, maybe you go in the right direction.
Mm-hmm.
And another point is people just jump to coding right away without even understanding what they are doing because they expect that on the way they'll somehow understand where they have to go with this. So they'll write 5 lines of code and they think that their brain's smart enough to figure out the rest of the 15 lines by themselves. Hardly how it works. You have to get it done right away.
Mm-hmm.
So that I think fifth was oh, right. Before we even jump into coding, right? I think the fourth was identifying the family of problems.
I see.
Uh, yeah, which family of problems it belongs to? Is it a backtracking problem, or is it
Mm.
a dynamic programming problem? Uh, Try to sort of map it to the patterns that you have in your head, that
Mm.
which pattern it falls for. For example, programming has multiple patterns in itself. This was number five. Number six was identify the data structure that you want to use.
Could you say
Which
that
data
again?
structure will be most which data structure do you want to use?
Okay.
Identifying which data structure will be the best for you in this particular case would be a good idea. Okay, it's a good practice to think it out at this stage.
Mm-hmm.
And seven is the coding part. Eight is the run run your code and see how it goes, as in do a dry run.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, preferably do it with edge case scenarios where you're talking about, let's say, what if the value is negative? What if the string is empty? What if the value is beyond the limits of what I have been given, my integer can hold?
Mm-hmm.
And do we have enough exception scenarios?
Mm-hmm.
Make sure that your code is prepared for those things. And a very good practice is at the end of the day, give the interviewer the time and space complexity of the program so that they know that you know what you've done.
Mm.
Right. So make sure that you communicate that. Make sure that you talk about your program like you know what you have done. Not about something that, what, this is the problem that I've seen on lead code, this is how I solved it, and this is what I know will work. There are scenarios where I've given an interview where I performed the very I gave them the very efficient solution at the right beginning. And they said, I understand this is the efficient solution, but I don't want the efficient solution. I implemented something using BFS, for example, right? It was uh, something that they wanted to remove the right, they wanted to, I don't know, they want to print every line of a tree, for example, something like that. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So they wanted to print every element at every level of a tree,
Mm-hmm.
something like that. It required level order traversal. And I gave a straightforward BFS solution that, you take each level at a time, you put it in a queue, and you start to print it. My interviewer said, I understand that is the efficient solution, but I want you to give me a solution in DFS,
Mm-hmm.
which is not something that you will see anywhere. No one has implemented this in DFS because it's just a very inefficient solution. You will need
Mm-hmm.
extra memory, and there will be so many recursive calls, there will be stack memory involved. But I did it, right? Because I understood what I was doing, because I understand the fundamentals of the entire thing.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not always about knowing what you have to do. It's not always about knowing what is the solution for a program. It's about knowing how well you know the concepts that are involved in this particular question.
Absolutely, man. Yeah, yeah. So there's a lot of steps there. I'll write those out as well in the show notes just so people can see that. But you're definitely echoing something I've heard a couple of times already on the podcast from other people like at Google and Amazon engineers who've said the same thing, and it's that you could hypothetically get all of the questions wrong, in that interview and still pass because you know exactly what you're talking about and you know how it's structured, you know the patterns, and you can explain it logically, like you've just said, even if there is no solution or you haven't quite got there because you didn't have enough time. So I think that's a really I'm not a developer, so like I can only speak about this sort of abstractly, but it seems like that's sort of a pretty big trend or a pattern amongst a lot of tech companies and how they're interviewing.
And I feel that at this point, the interview process is evolving because people understand that just having someone to give out a rough code may let out on the interviews missing something, right? So I think now accuracy is becoming a factor. There are interviewing companies like Carrot, right? When I was interviewing at Coinbase, my interview was scheduled to Carrot, which is an interviewing agency
Mm-hmm.
providing interviews as a service,
Mm-hmm.
basically,
Mm-hmm.
right? So they outsource the interviews. They give out the candidate names, and Carrot interviews the candidate on the company's behalf.
Mm-hmm.
And I think accuracy becomes of critical importance over there because I felt that I mean in every code that I had, they had a bunch of test cases written. They wanted me to write down the entire code and run it against the test cases and make sure that it works,
Mm-hmm.
right? And in those scenarios, you have to be uh, quick with your coding abilities. You have to be able to make sure that you're up to the speed. And second, that the code is covering the edge cases. Your code is giving out accurate results. So those things become very important over there. And I think with time, we need to also prepare. We also need to let the engineers know that uh, the times where it was okay for you to not get all the questions right is slowly going away because companies are now focusing because there are a lot of candidates and lead coding and getting into a company is becoming way too easy.
Mm-hmm.
So companies have started to look for people who can code right.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Thanks for sharing that. So I think we're actually coming up on time here soon, but I wanted to see if there's anything else. I think that was pretty awesome to hear that and that structure. I think that's a pretty good technique that people can use. Is there anything else that maybe you wanted to share around Microsoft, around interviewing there, around expectations, or anything else at all?
I think as far as Microsoft is considered, all I would say is that it's a great place to start your career with. And I won't say that, it's a stepping stone for real, because definitely for someone who wants to learn, they'll find some place anywhere, right?
Mm-hmm.
Uh, it's just that you have to be aware of what you're getting into. You have to make sure that you're not getting too comfortable, and you will have a lot of cultural learning. You will have a lot of best practices. There are so many soft skills that I've developed at Microsoft that I don't think I could have developed anywhere else.
Mm-hmm.
So, and as far as interviewing at Microsoft goes, make sure that you study about the company.
Mm-hmm.
There are plenty of resources available at this point that everyone talking about the Microsoft interview experience. It's fine. The company wants to make sure that you as a candidate are performing well and having a good time. And I think that's for all the companies. No company wants to intimidate you, even at Amazon or Microsoft. No company wants to intimidate you in the interview process. But one thing that you have to be mindful of is that you know your stuff. You don't just go to a particular company hoping that they ask an easy question. Because even if they do, it won't matter if you're not very confident in the fundamentals. Maybe interview at a few different places first.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe try to get some interview experience.
Mm-hmm.
Have some mock interviews. Can't stress on how important having mock interviews by people from these companies are. And yeah, and also focus a little on your resume. If you're slipping in your resume, try to get your resume reviewed.
Mm-hmm.
Try to make sure, like, talk to people from the company, send them your resume before even getting a referral. Ask them if the resume seems fit, given the company standards or not. So yeah, I don't
Awesome.
think it's rocket science. It's just fun. It's just a lot of fun.
Awesome. That there's like a lot of advice and tips you threw in there, like in 1 minute. So that's good. I think that's a great place to end, man. Well, I really appreciate your time. I had a lot of fun, and yeah, I'll also link back to your coaching profile if people are interested to chat with you about any of this. And yeah, hope we can do it again sometime
Absolutely, Misha. I had a lot of fun. Thanks for having me here.
for sure.
And I really love the work that you're doing at Kairos because and I think I know a lot of people like me who constantly want to give back to the community,
Hmm.
um, be it through open source, be it through coaching, be it helping people who are as confused as we were at one point. And a platform like yours allows us to do that, allows us to meet people who are scared, who are uh, worried about finding the right path,
Hmm.
who are as lost, who are just seeing everyone else succeed right next to them,
Hmm.
who are just tired of seeing the stories coming up on LinkedIn every now and then about someone making it big and not, and feeling a little out of place, feeling a
Hmm.
little demotivated. And I think just getting an opportunity to be able to be someone who helps them get out of that hole and helps them in any way. It's truly a priceless experience.
Yeah, man, I appreciate that. Thank you. Well, that about wraps it up for today. I hope you enjoyed that conversation. And as usual, I will link back to Harsh's profile, his coaching profile, and also his LinkedIn profile, as well as the workshop that he did a few weeks ago about the Microsoft interview process. It goes in a little bit more in depth. It's a bit more structured than our conversation today. So if you are interviewing, then I think that will be very very useful for you to check out. And if you have any feedback, questions, comments on this episode, feel free to send me an email, and I would love to hear from you. All right. Well, I hope you have a awesome day and awesome rest of the week, and I will see you next time.